So we got dividends. Let's talk about it. So dividends are a portion of a corporation's profits, and they pay them out to whoever, their shareholders, the people who own their stock, own part of their companies, and a lot of companies pay their dividends, to their investors, usually on a quarterly basis. But here's the question: how much do you need to invest to live off dividends? Right? That's interesting. I mean, as you build your investment portfolio, you'll probably reinvest your dividends to grow your wealth faster. But could you eventually use them to fund your lifestyle in retirement? If so, how much do you need to invest to live off dividends? That's what we're going to go over. We're going to go over this is the reason why I want to go over because it's a passive income strategy, right? And everyone loves passive income, right? But we're going to talk about how much money you'd need to pull it off, whether it's realistic, and how to assess its merits. So, first off, how do you even live off of the dividends? Well, living off the passive income from your investments and becoming financially independent, it's captivating. It'll grab your attention, right? Especially if you can do it earlier than you expected. Fortunately, there's a lot of ways to create an investment portfolio that can support you indefinitely. And a popular option is to invest enough money in assets that pay enough dividends to cover your annual expenses. Now, to figure out the amount of money you need to invest to live off dividends, you're going to need to define two variables: the amount you plan to spend per year and the dividend yield of your intended portfolio. And once you got them, just a basic formula, right? So let's say you plan to spend $40,000 a year to support yourself and your family. Now, if you believe you could achieve a portfolio with a dividend yield of 3%, we're going to take that $40,000, we're going to divide it by 3, and we're going to find a minimum portfolio value of $1.333 million. Right? That's simple. The best way to start building a spending plan for the future basically is to assess your current expenses and adjust them as necessary. Right? I would suggest, plugging your debit or credit card into a digital budgeting tool so you can automatically track all your expenses in a convenient location. Just one place, it's tracking everything. You don't got to worry about it. It tells you what's up. Or do it old school. You can write everything down using pen and paper. But I mean, why would you? It's too easy to forget cash transactions, make typos, or give up on the practice altogether. Maybe you do it for a couple days, a couple weeks, and it's too much. It's always easier. You can automate it. Automate it. Makes everything easier. I promise. Now, what's a realistic dividend yield? Right? We use 3% in our example, but what are we talking here? What can we expect? Well, once you know how much you plan to spend each year, you got to figure out what kind of dividend yield you can actually achieve. And it's going to vary, but you can generally expect a yield between 1 to 6%. Your investment portfolio total dividend yield will depend on its composition. There's a couple examples of average historical dividend yields on some popular assets. So, like the Vanguard S&P 500 Index Fund ETF, 1.85%. Ford, the company Ford, their stock, 4.88% average. The Schwab U.S. Real Estate Investment Trust, a REIT ETF, 2.67%. Now, while you can't know for sure what dividends an asset will pay out in the future, you can get a good idea by reviewing its historical yields. You should be able to find them featured prominently on the assets page at your brokerage or, using independent databases online. You could go to Yahoo Finance. There's a couple other websites. It's right there. Free. You just go type in the ticker symbol, and there'll be a tab. You can go look up the history of anything of these stocks you want to, going back 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years if that's how long it's been around. Now, how are we going to evaluate the dividend sustainability? Because when you're building a portfolio of dividend-paying assets, sometimes you just want to pick the highest yield, the one that pays the most. But that's super risky. There's a lot more to consider when you're evaluating the value of a stock than its dividend. In fact, those with the highest yields are usually the riskiest. That means there's an inverse relationship between yield and stock price. If one goes down, the other goes up. Someone who picks stocks for their increasing yields could accidentally acquire assets that are dropping in price. It's a quick way to lose money. Because of this, you should always assess the sustainability of an asset's yield before adding it to your portfolio. If it's over 100% and has been for a few years, the company's paying out more than they make, which isn't possible forever. Conversely, a ratio that has been steadily increasing for a decade could be a sign that the business is maturing healthily. If you're going to live off dividends from your portfolio, you need to make sure you do this kind of due diligence before you invest any of your money. Please do your research. You want those dividends to last. You want your money to last, and we don't want to lose any money. Now, how much do you need to invest to live off dividends? Okay. How much you need to invest is a function of your annual expenses and the dividend yield of your portfolio. So we can look at a realistic example. We're going to take a single person with a high risk tolerance. Right? The only reason why I'm doing this is because that's me. We're going to use me an example. Right? Let's say I'm spending $48,000 to support myself each year. Relatively, median to high cost of living. Right? Now, I have a high risk tolerance, and I'm comfortable putting together a portfolio in retirement that's more heavily weighted towards equities than bonds and contains a lot of REITs with high dividend yields. So, let's say expect retirement portfolio to pay a dividend yield of about 6% per year. So, $48,000 divided by 6% means got to invest about $800,000 to live off dividends. That's how I'm going to make, right? If I have $800,000 in at 6%, it's going to be paying me about $48,000 a year. That's simple. Just basic math. So, can you live off dividends? Yeah. While you can live off the dividends from your investment, it doesn't mean it's the best, the most optimal retirement strategy. You're generally better off optimizing your portfolio's total return than you are chasing a high dividend yield just for the sake of dividends. While there's something instinctively satisfying about living solely off dividends, it's usually not necessary to distinguish between living off dividends versus a portfolio of equities in general. In truth, there's no practical, difference between distributing money from your portfolio through dividends or through selling assets, right? It just comes down to what you want, what you prefer, and how you want to go about doing it, right? Do your research, talk to a professional. Don't make any decisions, just, this is what I want to do and go. You need to figure out the pros and cons. There's just so much that goes into it. And again, what's best for me, what's good for me, it's not for you. So this is just information to help you make a better informed decision, right? So hopefully, you take this information, you go talk to a professional, you figure out what it is you want to do, and we achieve that. And I hope you achieve that. And while you're doing that, I hope you come back for the next video. But until then, y'all be safe.